match here. Magnus is playing with the white pieces, starts the game, and it's the Sicilian by black, that is Shamsiddin. So after the pawn is captured, knight captures back here, and knight comes in here to c6. This is the Sicilian defense. Time or no variation on the board here. It's an opening actually favored by Magnus. Now he's playing against that particular opening, the Sicilian here. So let's see how Magnus goes about this. He pushes his pawn to c4 now, allowing the knight to develop to c3, and this pawn will be free to move forward without the knight's obstruction. Knight comes out and Magnus brings his knight out. Bishop comes in and attacks the knight. Knight retrieves. Black castles on the king side of the board here, and Magnus brings his bishop out and counters the dark square bishop, which was commanding quite a lot of space and was attacking the f2 pawn. Pawn push and bishop move by Magnus. Light square bishop getting ready to castle on the king side. Black re-entered the bishop. Magnus castles. Queen comes up the board and the position is equal after 10 moves. Magnus brings his queen up, forming a battery, and rook comes in, forming an extra attack on Magnus's queen. So let's see if Magnus retrieves the queen, because so Magnus brings his rook to d1, creating a battery. Black brings his other rook. Magnus goes for the bishop capture here, trading the bishop off. So pawn is forced to capture here, messing up the queenside pawn structure of black, which quite usually is the case in Sicilian actually. This opens up the b file for the rooks to infiltrate, and the b2 pawn will be under pressure. Magnus brings his queen to e3 now, away from that extra attack of the rook on d file. Pawn is pushed to d6. Magnus pushes his pawn to f4. Pawn push again. Magnus brings his rook up to d2 now, clearly looking to bring his rook to d1 and to attack this weak backward pawn on d6 over here. So queen now comes in to c7. Magnus brings his rook to d1 now, forming a battery on the d file, and pawn push is offered. Magnus didn't go for the exchange and push up the pawn to f5. Knight comes in and uses the double pawn as an outpost. If Magnus captures, this pawn will recapture. We cannot capture that particular knight with his knight. Bishop comes to d3 now, protecting the weak backward pawn. Pawn push to h6 now, not allowing. Queen to h3 by Magnus. Bishop move by black. Magnus brings his knight. queen b7 and queen h4. Magnus plays queen h4 now, improving the position of his queen. It's a close position, it's closed in the center, not exactly close, but the piece is the. So queen comes to e7 now. Magnus brings his rook to f1. Rook into b file, attacking the b2 pawn. Magnus pushes his pawn to g4. The position is kind of still equal. Now this is the knight move to d5 here, going for the knight queen trade here. You cannot capture this knight because the queen is hanging Magnus queen. So if Magnus captures the queen, the knight will recapture. So Magnus goes for the queen trade, knight recaptures and pushes pawn to h4 now Magnus. Rook to b7. So looking to bring the rook here to b8, launching an attack on the b2 pawn. So Magnus brings his rook to g2 now against the black king. So rook doubles up. Magnus creates his battery on the second rank. Both the rooks creates his battery and supports the pawn on b2 and king to f8. Brings his king to h2. Pawn push. King again goes up the board. And pawn push again now. Looking to attack the b2 pawn with that pawn push. So Magnus brings his knight back to d1 and support the b2 pawn. Knight reorients and Magnus retrieves his other knight to b1. Knight comes back into the game. Magnus brings his knight to c3. So rook goes into and knight goes in here, supports the pawn. King comes up the board. Magnus brings his knight to c2 here. And this is the mistake. Now Magnus goes for the capture of the knight here, and so he recaptures, and Magnus just captures this rook here, and Shamsiddin resigns the game because after this captures, the following moves will be played, and Magnus will win this match because he's up the exchange, and he will probably win the match. So the opponent resigned, and Magnus